Ladies and gentlemen, it's good to be back for you as we deal with the proposition. The Scriptures teach that the general resurrection of the dead is yet future and is a bodily resurrection. I want to proceed to deal with the fellowship issue that we have been discussing as well. Notice the big F, little f here. This represents a concept that's been taught by Brother Rubel Shelley, that he can fellowship certain people on certain levels or at certain points and under certain conditions, and yet not fellowship them in the big F sense. He can fellowship them in the little f. Little fellowship, big fellowship. There have been other versions of this, but basically that summarizes it. This is a teaching, a doctrine of Rubel Shelley. Now last night my opponent said that he can fellowship Brother William Bell on the matter of covenant eschatology, that will enable him to maintain this relationship. Notice that if that's true, then why can't he fellowship Don Preston? Because Don Preston also teaches covenant eschatology, and Don Preston also works with Brother Bell in a radio program and in other special works. If you can do it on the one basis, why can't you do it for the one? Why can't you do it on the other? And so we want to ask Brother Neubauer if he's willing to come out and announce that he's actually in fellowship with Don Preston after he's been spending a couple of years at least denying that he's in fellowship. Further, as this doctrine implies the doctrine of universalism, by the way, Brother Preston is now teaching. He is teaching at a universalist college or university. And so the question comes up, since he can fellowship universalists and can participate with them and aid them as far as getting students and bringing in money and things of that nature, be paid by them and go right along with what they're doing, why can't he go back and fellowship Brother Max King as he formerly did and their universalism? And why can't then Brother Holger Neubauer also fellowship not only Don Preston and William Bell, but also Max King and Tim King and the whole Kingite group? Where does he draw the line when it comes to the matter of fellowship? This is the situation he's put himself in, and he needs to address this, not try to dodge it. Moving on, we come to he brought up the matter of Brother Wallace and Brother Nichols. Now concerning Brother Foy Wallace, as far as his view that he mentioned last night, Brother Wallace's view was not even known until after Brother Wallace died. It came out in a letter that was published by Brother James D. Bales following the death of Brother Wallace. And Brother Wallace, by the way, did not go around the brotherhood pushing his doctrine, dividing churches, and then standing up and bragging about it. He didn't do that. Totally different attitude by the man. He knew, evidently, that division would be brought about if he went out and pushed it. And so he kept it to himself and did not pursue it. Further, with Brother Nichols, and by the way, I didn't know Brother Wallace's position until Brother Bales brought it up. Brother Wallace never told me about it. As far as Brother Nichols, I talked with Brother Flavel Nichols, and I'm sure you will recognize that name. That was Brother Gus's eldest son. And I pointed this out to you, Brother Baston, here a while back. Evidently, you didn't tell Brother Holger about it. That Brother Flavel Nichols on a lectureship in Chattanooga told me that Brother Gus had repented. He had recanted of that doctrine, and to bring it up and to attack him now that he's dead, not here to defend himself, is a bit ungracious, a bit unchristian, and especially since Brother Baston was told this and should have let Brother Holger know about it before he attacked Brother Nichols. So we need to put that to rest. Both in the case of both Brother Wallace and Brother Nichols, neither one of them pushed their doctrine. Neither one of them sought to divide churches over. Neither one of them split congregations and then bragged about it and said, boy, we're taking you to task, and things of that nature. They love the brotherhood, and they refuse to be the instruments of such division, unlike some brethren. And so we need to recognize that. Then we need to come and look at this matter of the law of Moses. On the law of Moses, he asked this question as concerning the Apostle Paul in Acts chapter 21. And at first he said, I never answered it. He brought it up in the last debate, said, I never answered it. Then he turned around and he went right to the passage that he said I used in answering it, in responding to it. Now, brethren, I either answered it or didn't answer it. He said, I didn't answer it. Then he turned around and said, I answered it, using 1 Corinthians 9, verses 20 through 22. Now, look at what Paul said. 1 Corinthians 9, and unto the Jews I became as a Jew, that I might what? Gain the Jews. To them that are under the law, as under the law, that I might gain them that are under the law. To them that are without law, or without the law, as without the law, being not without law to God, but under the law to Christ, that I might gain them that are without the law. Now keep in mind, he says he was under the law to Christ, which implies then he was married to the law of Christ, and thus married to Christ, by the way. And he'll have a problem with that, and he'll have a fit with it. Verse 22, to the weak became I as weak, that I might gain the weak. I am made all things to all men, that I might by all means save some. And I stand by that passage. It answers it. The fact of the matter is, the law was nailed to the cross. Colossians 2:14, Bible says that. In fact, I pointed out that if it was nailed to the cross, it was on the cross. If it's on the cross, it was then taken away at the cross. When Jesus was nailed to the cross, what happened? He died. The law was nailed to the cross, so what happened to it? It too died. From Acts 2 onward, the Jews were amenable to the gospel of Christ. In fact, that's what Peter implies in Acts 2, verse 38 through 40. And they were coming out of a formerly divinely appointed system into a new divinely appointed system, and the long-suffering of God made it possible for Jewish Christians to keep certain aspects of the law in order that they might win their Jewish countrymen. The Lord was merciful in that regard and long-suffering. By the way, Galatians, Romans, 1st and 2nd Corinthians had already been written before Acts 21. And if Paul did anything concerning the law in order to stand in a right relationship with God and thus be justified by that, Galatians 5:4 said he would have been fallen from grace. So let them address that. That's their problem, not mine. We're going to see they have a bigger problem down the road in just a moment because of their position that the law was being taken away incrementally. That is, bit by bit, piece by piece, slowly over time. They're going to come back. They're going to meet themselves coming back on that particular aspect. There's a self-contradiction in their doctrine, and they haven't even realized it. He made this big deal about instrumental music, offering animal sacrifices today. That's just nonsense. There's nothing comparable to their situation today. It doesn't exist. Furthermore, even with instrumental music, there is no evidence whatsoever that mechanical instrumental music was being used in the Second Temple of Judaism. That is what is called Herod's Temple. We definitely know that in synagogue worship, no instrumental music was used. And so that entire matter is a red herring. Now we come to the matter of the argument relative to Acts chapter 1, verses 9 through 11. Acts 1, 9 through 11. I want you to come back over here. What has he actually said about this? He has said that somehow Jesus was covered up with that cloud so they couldn't see him. He was hidden by the cloud. The Bible doesn't say that. Nowhere in that text are the words hidden by the cloud. It's not there. It does say that he was taken up with the cloud into heaven, and at some point, of course, they would stop seeing him. But if you notice verse 9, they were seeing him right from the start. And when he had spoken these things, while they beheld, he was taken up. They what? He was taken up. They watched him. Right now we don't even have the cloud. They're still watching him. And a cloud, and literally the Greek says, took him up out of their sight. So eventually he left their sight, but they were watching him as they took him up. And while they looked steadfastly toward heaven, as he went up. You think they knew he was going up? Surely they knew he was going up to heaven. Behold, two men stood by them in white apparel, who also said, Ye men of Galilee, why stand ye gazing up into heaven? This same Jesus, who is taken up from you into heaven, shall so come in like manner as ye have seen. They have seen him go. Him is the direct object of seeing. They saw Christ go up. And he's going to come back the way he went. You have seen him go into heaven. He's wanting to cloud it over, so it's as though Jesus is there on the ground, the cloud comes down, covers him up, and they lose sight of him right then. That's not what the passage teaches. He is taken up from them visibly, literally, personally. They see him. He's on his way up. The cloud comes down to receive him and take him on up with them. That's what happened. And the angel says coming back the same way. Personally, I believe the angel. I don't believe these men worth a hoot. I believe the angel. The Bible teaches that they saw him. They saw him going into heaven. And he is to come the same way in which he left. Over and again, translators have noted that fact, and various commentators have observed that fact. By the way, he says that Jesus came personally, literally, and even visibly in the destruction of Jerusalem in AD 70. We asked for the address. We're still waiting. We were never given the address by these men. We want to ask for one more thing. Can you give us a police artist sketch? Can you do that? You said you've seen him. You've seen him personally. He's personally. You've seen the person of Jesus Christ. He came personally. I'm sure you understand the meaning of the word personally. And the same of the word literally. And the word visibly. They say that Jesus is in them now. And yet they can see him. Do you have eyes in the back of your head or something, or somewhere behind your optic nerve that is looking at the literal person of Jesus Christ in your body? You said that he's there. Now, you talk about silly. That's silly. I want you to take a look at this. Here's on this matter. these are some questions we ask concerning this matter, this from Thursday night. The Great Commission ended in AD 70. Notice, he said false. Then, every person who dies spiritually is out of fellowship with God. He said true. And by the way, he said tonight that Jesus Christ died spiritually on the cross. So what does that mean? If every person, that's a universal affirmative, if every person who dies spiritually is out of fellowship with God, and Jesus died spiritually on the cross, then what does that imply? Jesus Christ was out of fellowship with the Father on the cross. Now, brethren, that's heresy. That implies some things that they can't deal with. They cannot handle it. Notice further. Jesus was to return the same way he left at his ascension. They marked it true. True! Well, how did he leave? He left visibly, personally. They saw him with their physical sight. Is he going to come back where people can see him? Revelation 1:7 says that he will come back that way. 1 John 3, verses 1 through 3 teaches the same thing. We shall see him even as he is. And said, we're even going to be like him. We're going to be like him. Then Jesus returned, literally, personally, visibly in AD 70, and is visible today. I believe everybody can understand those simple words. That's not complicated language. They want to make it complicated because they've got to avoid this simple passage that is so clear is historical, literal prose. That's where he is. He's stuck with it. He can't deal with that. And then we ask the question in the New Testament, is the Old Testament transformed? He said false. And yet we have some statements that have a tendency to lean the other way, and we'll bring those out as time proceeds. Now, I want to bring up this concerning scholars. He said Denham likes scholars, but he likes the dead ones. He likes dead scholars. Brother Neubauer, are you aware that J.P. Green is dead? I guess you can't use him anymore. Suddenly J.P. Green can't be used anymore. He's a dead scholar. Let's see if he'll abide by his own rule. He makes rules and then won't apply them to himself. Another thing is, I had asked him concerning the aorist indicative with the augment, if the quote he was using from Dr. Green meant that he could interpret that particular construction just any old way he wants. And he said, no, that's not what I'm saying. Well, then why did he bring it up? Why did he bring that up? Why did he even use that quote? It had nothing at all to do with what I was saying concerning the aorist indicative with the augment, that any Greek scholar, any Greek teacher will tell you, even in a first year class, will tell you in a first year class, it indicates past action. It cannot be proleptical in that type of situation. The augment will not permit it. The augment is a marker for past action. It simply is contrary to his teaching. Brethren, he has given up his doctrine by what he admitted on Acts chapter 1. He admitted that Jesus came visibly, personally, and bodily. He admitted that they can see him. And so that admits my proposition. He also admits, by the way, that refers to the second coming and that the resurrection's involved. Well, he's in effect given up his doctrine. Look at Romans 8. Romans 8, verse 11. Romans 8, verse 11. We ask him if this mortal bodies referred to physical bodies. He said no. Isn't that interesting? Young says it's referring to dying bodies. Dying bodies. So we're talking about dying physical bodies. And thank you.